Well, I'd like to thank you for this talk. I really appreciated the fact that it was pitched, so much of it in the interrogative mode. Yeah, but it's important to get the questions out. This is the first of these conferences. Let's get the questions on the table. And the questions reflect the complexity of the issues, and I'm very, very pleased with that. And I was also struck by a comment you made about managing anxiety. Where the human resources person, if it's the legal representative or the dean or director or whatever, and you said we don't manage people, and I agree with that. I think that so much of the problems, on the home campus anyway, is there is an attitude that we manage persons, we manage people, and I don't think you can. I think you can only manage an environment where people are invited and supported to do their best work, but truly invited. And that's why I think when we were talking about the faculty kind of diaspora, where they're teaching in 15 different institutions, the development of a faculty culture in our institutions, or a shared faculty culture across multiple institutions in the same city, but the whole feeling of the faculty feeling empowered because they're part of a faculty culture and not somehow the proletariat, the teaching proletariat. But I know we're going to have other papers on this subject, but I just wanted to thank you for those, so many of the wonderful insights that you had here, and also emphasizing the positive, because my talk is going to talk about alienation, but also affirmation. But I thank you for your thought.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would like to add something. I think this is very important to have these professional definitions and standards. It's fantastic, and we need to start doing this. One thing that is not in here that I would like also to emphasize is the importance of awareness by staff and faculty of the fact that the survival of the program depends on them. So something like bonding and team building and awareness that only working together the program can survive and can expand is fundamental. So I would also spend some energy on this because I believe this is very important.
Thank you.
I think you have painted a very complex and rich picture. In fact, it is a complex world, and there are multiple challenges. One of them I wanted to point out is the whole issue of the adjunct faculty status, which has a certain meaning on the home campuses of our institutions. Of course, there's a huge debate going on in the States about who the adjuncts are, what they should do, shouldn't do, how they should be treated. The adjunct project on the Chronicle of Higher Education, all of that. Interestingly, this label of the adjunct has a different meaning / no meaning here, especially if we go towards a model of a contratto a tempo indeterminato under the Fornero reform, because of course the adjunct presupposes a temporary status and being disposable somehow, whereas of course, in the Italian model, you don't have that, or you only have it in special situations and only for an amount of time. So I think this is one, I'm going to say a few things about it tomorrow in my paper, but I think it's also an element of further complexity that even translating and actually making sure that the terms that we use have the same meaning is a major task. It's not an easy thing, not at all. So it actually poses a number of problems to understand what
I'm glad
the other is saying.
Absolutely. As I said, this was meant to be an overview, really. In no way, I couldn't and didn't plan on going into details here. But I'm really glad there will be other people who will go into the details of these complexities. I know that AAUP, which is the Association of Professors in America, is now thinking of a new term, which is contingent faculty. Just the same. Yesterday I heard affiliated faculty. important that we start having this discussion, regardless of, I am sure that at one point we will have a new and appropriate title, but it's important that we start discussing it and we start, and we're all scholars and intellectuals, so we can start, advocating for ourselves, so.
I fear that we're describing this cosmopolitan personas. They're very different from the typical academic proletarian who teaches the programs, but also to the very aloof typical student. So I don't know if we're ever going to solve that problem. If we see things simply from one perspective, which is the main perspective, that is that most of these programs are American. And so this implies a general redefinition, I think, of international relationships. I mean, this is just an observation. I don't have any answer. When you were talking about this, I'm saying something more and more sophisticated, like we are to become more and more cosmopolitan. And cosmopolitan, as one of my colleagues said in a conference that we had at Gonzaga, is mostly the title of a magazine. You know what I'm saying? There is a very strong economical factor that is limiting the possibility, for example, for the staff to really get to know how it is to work in America, and therefore to compare what our students are used to see as a performance. For example, I'm just touching one of the subjects.
I'm glad you brought that up. I just want to add a little thing, although the majority of study abroad enterprises these days may seem they're US-based, may seem that they're US-based, that's no longer true. Australia is very aggressive in studying abroad, and there are a lot of enterprises, especially from Asia, Japan, that's getting quite aggressive. So the future, 5-10 years from now, will no longer be just US program. We've been contacted by Japanese university to be used as a base for their academic enterprises. So this is the future. So that's why I think it's
It might be the cure.
It might be what, sorry?
The cure of the disease.
Maybe. That's why I brought that, I wrote that quote about the human resources management approach, because we want to start, because we are in the field, I think we want to make sure that the language, I'm a language passionate, so for me, identity is always about words. I'm partly Serbian, and for me it was very interesting how from one day to the next, the nation in which I somewhat grew in didn't exist anymore.
Well, I'm partly Croatian, so we can talk about it.
Okay, but one day I could say Yugoslavia, and the following day I couldn't say it anymore. Taboo word. Okay, anyway, so we need words, and the future is no longer not just about U.S. Programs and U.S. students. Troy, sorry.
This is an observation to one of your earlier points.
We can't hear the question.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I'll speak loudly. I think the careful management of... Is that right?
Can you hear me? Yes. I think the careful management of people takes above all time. It takes a huge amount of time. And I think that I like your solution at the end where you talked about the importance of having someone who does this. And I'll bet in most study abroad programs there's not someone who looks after the careful sort of career development of the people working in various programs. Someone who would have the expertise to deal with staff positions and their career development, in addition to faculty positions and their career development on an adjunct track. So that's sort of my first observation, is that actually managing people takes a huge amount of time. And then I also have to confess that I detest the term human resources. You want to talk about language. I feel like the moment that you step into a paradigm where humans become resources, you have already lost.
Yes.
You are stepping into a paradigm that is dominated by the social sciences, and the social sciences are all about standardizing things, and I think that can take you a long way. The social sciences are brilliant at figuring, are there standard job descriptions, can people be put into categories where their behavior in organizations is predictable and therefore manageable? Yes, to a certain extent it can. And then a part of me wants to say, yes, but then human life steps in. And then I feel like then you need the arts, then you need literature, then you need something other than the social sciences where you realize every single human being is going to be different and the issues that they bring to their role are going to be very particular, and a standardized human resources response isn't going to work. I think this is really exciting and really interesting to think about combining different approaches where you can standardize to a certain extent, and then you reach a point where you say, but I'm dealing with an individual human being and their own sort of history and their own desire and their own aspirations and their own issues and their own baggage. And to actually manage people with that kind of sweep takes an enormous amount of attention and time and care. And so I just wanted to sort of put that out there because I think it's really important, and I think it's complex. And I just wanted to allow us to step outside of the human resources, which is, that's dominated by a business paradigm.
Yep.
But its foundation is essentially in the social sciences that says that human beings can be put into categories because they're similar types. And I say yes, but let's not forget that they're also individuals.
Sylvia, has a question?
Yeah, I think tying into that, I'm not sure if you can hear me. Tying into that is this whole question of language, categories, implications. I see one of the challenges that we have that I experience personally is the difference in job titles. Okay, in the U.S., what would be called an office manager here is an administrative assistant because of the legal implications
Yes.
by Italian contract.
Yes.
To say manager, that
You can't go there. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And yet, in what very often an administrative assistant is managing an office, and I think it's psychologically it's a problem
Yeah.
for the employees.
Yeah, I agree. And on our side, on one side I hear you, and on the other side,
What can you do? Exactly. Yeah. Right.
I think we have time for one last question. I saw your hand, Patrick. Okay, so I think we're ready for the coffee break. Thank you everyone.